I think it was the playwright Edward Albee who wrote, "The reason truth is stranger than fiction is because fiction has to remain within the realm of probability." Truth is often stranger than fiction. Certainly the story I'm going to tell you now strains credibility. Folklorist Hector Lee calls it the bucking bear of Bodega. In the Old West, since so many men were here without families, boarding houses were a popular place to stay. Here you had a place to sleep and home-cooked meals. In the bustling city of Bodega in 1850, there were dozens of these boarding houses. There were also dozens of hotels and almost as many saloons. Bodega was populated with loggers cutting down the redwood trees, and mill hands turning those logs into usable lumber. There wasn't a lot to do, and gambling became a popular pastime. Fistfights were a common occurrence. This story begins with a man named Jersey Ray, who lived in Bodega in the 1850s. Nobody knows what his last name actually was. Folks called him Jersey Ray because he said he'd come from New Jersey. And Jersey Ray was well known, but not well liked. He was always sitting at the card tables. He was a gambler, and a lucky one at that. So perhaps it isn't surprising that folks didn't care much for Jersey Ray. Oh, not just the folks who don't like gambling, or gamblers in general, and not just the folks who lost their hard-earned cash to him. Even the other gamblers didn't care much for Jersey Ray. It was spring when a man named Tony West moved to Bodega and got work at the lumber mill. Tony was immediately pegged as a gambler. He worked the early shift at the lumber mill, and then he worked afternoons around the card tables. Tony West was always hanging around Jersey Ray. Not long after his arrival, he checked out of his hotel and took lodgings in the same boarding house where Jersey Ray was staying. Andy Stump also lived in the same boarding house as Jersey Ray. But unlike Jersey Ray and Tony West, Andy Stump was liked by just about everyone. You could always count on Andy Stump for a few good stories around the dinner table. All right, that's the cast. You've met the men this story's about. Jersey Ray, Tony West, and Andy Stump. Oh, we haven't gotten to the bear yet. One day in the fall of 1852, Jersey Ray didn't show up for lunch. Well, since he always got up late, nobody expected him at breakfast. But he was always the first one there for the noonday meal. So naturally, folks asked his sidekick, Tony West, "Where's Jersey?" They were surprised when West told them, "Jersey?" And Jersey decided to pull out. "Told me he's headed for Monterey or San Francisco." It sounded kind of strange. But since no one had cared that much for Jersey Ray, they didn't think much about it. A few days later, Andy Stump and Tony West got into some sort of hassle. They decided to go outside and have it out. A crowd gathered as the two men stood glaring at each other. West shouted, "I'll show you! Put 'em up!" Andy Stump, searching for something to yell back, shouted, "Why, you murderin', thievin' rat! You probably killed Jersey!" The words hung on the air. Then, to the crowd's astonishment, Tony West turned white, reeled around, and ran off. He ran towards the redwood canyons, so Andy took off, running right behind him. Later that afternoon, Andy Stump came limping back to the boarding house. "Boys, wait till you hear what happened. I was running right behind that son of a gun when he jumped across the creek. Well, I saw him land on something, and he screamed. And as I was jumping, I saw a little bear cub scurrying alongside the creek. But what I didn't see is that I was coming down, and I landed right on the big mama grizzly bear. Well, that bear growled and she took off running. So I grabbed 2 big fists of hair and held on for dear life. I was scared to death. I was scared to let go in case the bear would turn on me. And I wasn't sure I'd be able even to get up and run off since we were running by boulders and trees. Well, there we were crashing through the redwoods, the bear chasing Tony West, and there I am hanging on for all I was worth. Well, we were running alongside the creek, and I saw a place where the water looked kind of deep. So I figured it was now or never, and I kind of rolled off his back into the water. I listened. The bear didn't stop. I could hear it running on through the forest. So I came on back. Now this was hard to believe. Folks laughed. But they didn't believe him. After all, this was Andy Stump. Everyone knew he could always tell a good story. But the next day, a search party verified the story. They found Tony West, or what was left of him. He was pretty well chewed up. Another search party brought back the body of Jersey Ray. He'd been murdered, all right. His throat had been cut from behind. So, there you have it. Will Rogers once said, "California's a hard state to lie about. No matter what you say, it might be true." And so even though it is a bit hard to believe, in 1852 in the town of Bodega, a full-grown man took a ride on a bear's back, and that bear captured, prosecuted, convicted, and executed a murderer. Some folks say they elected that bear Justice of the Peace up there in Bodega. You can believe that if you want to.